it helped me so much to realize I'm a highly sensitive person, because all things that I rejected myself about came into such a different light.
Yeah, we look at things from a whole different perspective, and we start to see that the things that we criticize ourselves for were actually good things when you think about it. Today's video is a conversation I had with a very special guest who I was so excited to talk to. Her name is Esther Bergsma, and she is a Dutch high sensitivity expert. You may have spotted one of her books in my videos before. It's on my bookshelf about the brain of the highly sensitive person. Esther is a scientific researcher, keynote speaker, and author of several books about high sensitivity. She coaches and trains professionals in understanding and guiding HSPs better, and she loves sharing the scientific facts about the trait, kind of debunking some of the myths around it, as well as accentuating the many benefits and advantages that come with being highly sensitive. Like me, Esther is also a highly sensitive person herself who has experience with burnout, and we had a really great conversation about how to live a happy life as a highly sensitive person, how to deal with some of the challenges that can come with it, and how to embrace the trait fully in a world that isn't always built for sensitivity. I am personally really grateful to Esther for all her hard work in talking about high sensitivity and the science behind it. I will leave a link to her book, The Brain of the Highly Sensitive Person, and her website in the description box below. And without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Esther. So Esther, thank you so much for coming on the channel and welcome.
Thank you, Vera.
You are my first guest on the channel.
I'm honored.
So yeah, you are the expert and I'm so happy to have you here for our conversation. First, I thought it would be really nice to just hear a little bit more about you and your personal experience with being a highly sensitive person and how did you get into the field. Then I would love to get into kind of like the nitty gritty and the science about what actually high sensitivity really is, what makes us different from non-highly sensitive people, how is our brain different, and things like that, and what does the science have to say. And
Yeah,
lastly,
I'd love to tell about that.
yeah, that's what you know. So that is really nice. And then, yeah, I also asked my audience what they would like me to ask you. And I got so many questions about mostly just dealing with some of the challenges that come from being a highly sensitive person. For example, getting overstimulated very easily, um, having very high empathy, and then sometimes struggling with taking over other people's emotions or getting really saddened by world events. And many people also wanted me to ask you about how to talk about it with non-highly sensitive people who don't really know what it is, or who might even dismiss it and say like, oh, that's not a real thing. Family members, work situations, things like that. So yeah, we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, great.
So would you like to tell us a bit more about yourself and how you learned that you were a highly sensitive person?
Well, yeah, I think in many periods of my life, I have encountered um, the struggles of being a highly sensitive person, but I didn't know about it then. When I was about 38, I was working as a manager, and I got sick and had to stay at home and try to figure out what was going on with me. And I noticed that all the doctors didn't know what they had to do with me. They just gave me advice that I strictly followed because I'm very loyal to doctors and their advices, but that didn't work at all. So in that period, I read a book by Elaine Aron, and wow, I just thought, oh my God, that's me. And well, I was so strict and so criticizing myself all the time that I wasn't a good manager, that I didn't make the right decisions, I didn't make swift decisions, that I wasn't firm enough. And when I read that book, that I thought, well, no, but I am well considered, and I think about all the different aspects, and that makes me a good manager. But the way that the organization was and the culture was, that it didn't suit me. So that was the moment that I really started to get out of my burnout, because that was what I had. And it helped me so much to realize I'm a highly sensitive person, because all things that I rejected myself about came into such a different light.
Yeah, we look at things from a whole different perspective, and we start to see that the things that we criticize ourselves for were actually good things when you think about it.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a really big process in my recovery. And at the same time, I realized that both my children are highly sensitive. They were 8 and 6 at that time. So that was, as a mother, a really big discovery as well, because I tried to figure out how to cope with them and how to guide them in their lives and in their experiences. And it was a real big game changer for our whole family.
Were you like when you were a child? Obviously, like I have the same experience back when I was a kid. Like my parents didn't really know about high sensitivity. They didn't really know what to do with me sometimes, teachers too. Did you also have that experience?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because, well, people didn't know about it. So we can't blame them, of course,
No.
because it was just the way they treated children. And it was, well, I grew up in the north of the Netherlands, and it was really no emotions, just go forth and uh, don't cry. What do you have to cry for? So all my emotions were dismissed. And
Mhm.
it was really difficult for me, because I felt all those emotions, and I had the feeling that no one else was feeling them. And only when I read books that I noticed that the head characters were also having feelings, that I thought, okay, well, it's not just me, but in the real life, I really didn't understand how to do things.
Yeah. So that is great then that you now know and that you can
Yeah.
teach your children about it and help guide them.
Yeah, yeah, I'm really glad that I discovered that, and now I see my children, and of course they have their struggles as well, but they can talk about it, and I think that makes a big difference. They can talk
Yeah.
about being insecure or being anxious or being very happy, and it's all
Mm.
okay.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, and it's funny to me how so many highly sensitive people, myself included, learn about the trait and being highly sensitive when we go through a rough patch. Like for me, it was also burnout. For you, was the same. So when we kind of feel like, why can't we do what we see all the other people do? Why is it so hard for us? Or why are we always so like tired or emotional?
Hmm.
Um, and is that maybe because, like, in schools and everything, it's not really talked about that much, do you think?
Yeah, we have also to realize that there are highly sensitive people that have had a good upbringing, and they don't struggle with life as much as the people that didn't have the recognition they had.
Mm,
They're still highly sensitive. So there is a group that maybe just feels like they're really creative and really empathic, but don't feel the need to look for information. But there's a
mm,
big group of HSPs that haven't had the recognition for their very intense problems, because when we experience something, uh, because of our depth of processing, we feel it so more intensely in our emotions, in our stress level, in our bodies. And because other people don't really get that, they give us advice that doesn't match what we experience, or they just say, that's nothing. So you have the tendency to just carry on, to just stay strong, but that doesn't work. So then eventually you just can't go any further. And no, that's our burnouts, for example, but it can be other diseases as well. So because we don't have the recognition, we go on, and then we go too far. When it's a normal topic in this society, and when you meet boundaries of your potentials. And it's normal to think about, hey, who am I? I be highly sensitive, and you search for information at that point, then it's much more easy to take lessons from it and prevent your burnout or illnesses.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, and that is, I think, at least for me, one of the reasons I love talking about high sensitivity on the channel. Uh, just to let people know, like, this is a thing, and you may be highly sensitive. The funny thing is also, I did ask my audience a while back, do you consider
Mhm.
yourself to be a highly sensitive person? And by far, the majority said yes. We have a lot of HSPs here.
Yeah, yeah, great.
So, could we get into the science a little bit? Could you explain, like,
Yeah.
what is a highly sensitive person really?
So high sensitivity is a trait. It's an innate trait. So it's not something that you get. It's something you're born with, and it means that all the information from your surroundings you notice more subtle. That's all your senses, and of course that's hearing, sight, but it's also emotions. We call it emoception. That is that you notice the emotions of others more precise. So the surroundings have a lot of stimuli that come into your brain, and your brain does process that more deeply. And that means that your brain is making more connections with different brain areas. So the information is much more elaborately processed, and your brain is more focused on the social group. So it's trying to get what do we have to do to keep the harmony in the group or to stay appreciated within the group. And it's going very fast. Your brain is making overtime as an HSP. That has many advantages. I think we will speak of that later. But it also has some disadvantages because it takes a lot of energy. And that means that you are depleted more easily, that you have higher levels of stress after you have done a task. And your emotions are much stronger in the same situation than with your friends or with your colleagues. So we say that highly sensitive people observe more, process more deeply, and react more intensely.
So, because I was watching a video from an interview with Alanis Morissette, who is also a
Mhm.
highly sensitive person herself, and she mentioned that when a non highly sensitive person walks into a room, they observe about 50 bits of information. But when a highly sensitive person walks into a room, they observe about 500 bits of information. So, would you say that that is accurate, those numbers, or?
Well, not exactly those numbers, but the idea is accurate because we know that a highly sensitive person observes more in their environment, so the perceiving is more intense. That's through all the senses, so sound or sight, but also emotions. When we walk into a room, we feel the emotions of others, and sometimes we even feel them there ourselves. So that's called emoception. We also have interoception, which is a sense that senses from within the body. So there are
Mhm.
stimuli from externally and internally that we perceive more subtle. So yeah, you could
Also,
say
things
that,
like hunger, thirst,
yeah,
tiredness, like,
having to
yeah,
go to the
that makes
bathroom,
sense.
yeah, yeah, feeling your heartbeat, and
Ah,
all those signals, yeah. We can say that there are more stimuli coming into your brain because your senses are so sensitive to all those stimuli.
okay, yeah, that makes total sense. And I read in your book also a story that I could relate to on a very deep level, where you went to a carnival with your friends and then all the stimuli together, even though you were so looking forward to having fun with your friends and eating the nice food and going on the rides, after 30 minutes, you were so exhausted that you kind of also just felt a little gloomy. And That you basically just wanted to go home.
Yeah, I couldn't enjoy it anymore because those senses overwhelmed me so much. And also because I didn't understand what was going on and I saw everyone having fun and I just felt the energy flow away. And I get really irritable. I didn't react normal to my friends, and I just want to go home and lie in my bed under the
The safe
blanket.
space.
But yeah, but at the same time, I was so disappointed because it's not that often that you can go to a carnival. So
Mm.
I really wanted to go again. And it's something I think more HSPs can relate to because it's not that you don't like to go out, but there are so many stimuli that come to you and that come to you more intensely. Well, it's not easy to be in surroundings where a lot is going on.
No, definitely.
Yeah, and we do have research that HSPs differ from non-HSPs because they've tested it with different kinds of researches. It's really interesting to read about it. So we don't know literally is it 500 versus 50, but for example there was a research in which people had to look at a picture, and in the one eye there was a really busy picture with all kinds of colors and things, and in the other eye there was a face uh, that was not there but slowly appeared, and people had to press a button at the moment that they saw the face. HSPs press more early, so they see those subtleties that others don't see. So if you're at a movie or if you're at a carnival and you notice that your friends don't experience what you experience, you know that that's a real thing because we perceive more subtle.
And is HSP the same thing as SPS, sensory processing sensitivity? Because I see those terms kind of like used interchangeably online.
Yeah, that's correct. Sensory processing sensitivity is the scientific term. So when you're looking for scientific articles, that's the name that is used there. But high sensitivity is how the trait is described in popular books or
Media. Yeah.
yeah, media or websites. So it is
Okay.
the same thing.
And would you also say that HSP is neurodivergence, or is it different? Because one of the questions that I get asked a lot on the channel, and I always feel a little bit difficult to answer because I'm not a professional, is HSP not the same thing as autism, for example? Especially since we now know more about how autism presents, for example, in women than we did when Elaine Aron first wrote her book. We know that autism often goes undiagnosed, and people ask, is it actually not the same thing because they both change how we perceive and process sensory information?
Hmm. Yeah, but well, it's not the same thing. HSP is a kind of neurodivergent because the brain works differently. So there is an overlap in those sensing the sensory things. Although with people with autism, there's also hyposensitivity. That means that you don't notice those things about information that comes through the senses. But the main difference is how the brain processes things. So when you're highly sensitive, you perceive more subtle, your brain processes things more deeply, and you react more strongly. And what we know about the brain of the highly sensitive person is that there's more connectivity. So there are more brain areas that interact with each other, and there are more brain networks that are brain areas that are connected by nature, but those networks also connect with one another more intensely when you're an HSP. And we see that in brain scans. So when they do a task and we see what's going on in the brain, you see real big differences, and it's proven time and time again. There still needs to be a lot of more research about the differences between autism and HSPs, but what we do know about the connectivity and about specific brain areas, that does differ from what we know about autism. So we're fairly certain that there are two different things, although people with autism and people who are highly sensitive may experience some of the same things, but the nature is different.
That makes sense. And would it also, like, it is possible that someone identifies as a highly sensitive person and then later in life finds out, like, I also am on the autism spectrum? Like, it does come together sometimes, or is it always either or?
Well, we still don't know how that really works, because
Mm.
there's so many questions about the brain, and but at this point it looks like it's a really different thing. But
Yeah.
I can't really state it's this way or it's that way, because we just want to know more about it.
Yeah. More research is needed.
Yeah.
Something that I often hear is people think that all highly sensitive people are also introverts. But we know from research that's not true, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when Elaine Aron first started to do her research, she thought that sensitivity was a kind of subtrait from more introverted people. But in her first research, she already discovered that's not the case. So about 70% of the highly sensitive people are introverted. And in the total population, it's about one third. So there is a big difference.
Oh,
More HSPs are introverted than normal, but so there is about 30% extroverted. And we know from psychological research that more introverted people need their alone time, need time with their inner world to get new energy, while more extroverted people need to be in contact with others, have conversations and talks with other people to get their energy renewed. So it's more than being able to have conversations. The big difference is in where you get your energy from. So when you're
right.
extroverted and highly sensitive, you need the contact with your friends to have new energy, but it's also more depleting than other extroverted, because there are still a lot of stimuli coming within you when you are at the bar or at a party or something. So it's more difficult for an extroverted HSP to keep the balance than an introverted.
Yeah. So they get maybe a little bit like depressed or sad or something if they're not around enough people. But
Mm-hmm.
then when they do, they feel really tired because of all the stimuli.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
can
That's a
actually
good
relate to
balance.
that myself too. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Myers Briggs, the 16 personalities
Yeah,
test.
yeah,
For me, it also came out as an extroverted type, which really surprised me at first because I do need alone time to recharge. So I thought that made me an introvert, and maybe it does. But um, I started to think about it, and I do need people. I need to be around people regularly. Otherwise, I get really gloomy and cranky and uninspired. And I feel really nice when I'm surrounded with people. So then yeah, I don't really know what to do because if I go with my friend out to lunch, I'm having the best time, and then by the time it's almost like we're almost done, I'm just so incredibly exhausted from all the stimuli. So what I kind of do now is plan one of those things a day and don't really expect much more of myself for the rest of the day. Just come home, change into my comfy clothing, maybe curl up with a good book in bed and just kind of cool off a little. But it's really hard to find that balance between like too
yeah,
much in and too much out,
yeah,
especially as someone with an extroverted side to them, I think.
yeah. That's really difficult, and it's a great way for you to do it that way, because it's doing the new experiences with other people, and then giving yourself the time to process them and to unwind, and feel the energy that you did get from the contact, and then but you can't go from one to the other. Then it would deplete you too much.
Yeah, I've
So there,
noticed. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think that's a good way that you described to deal with
Okay.
this.
And what would you say is like the biggest misconception about high sensitivity that you hear in your work?
Oh, I hear a lot of misconceptions. Unfortunately, yeah. I feel so, because there's so much research, and we know so many things, and still there is such a twisted idea of what high sensitivity is. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that it is sensory overload. So that it would be the same thing. So everyone that is very triggered by loud noises, for example, and can't stand them, they must be highly sensitive. But that's not the case, because the sensory sensitivity is most of the time the part of being highly sensitive, but it's that deep processing that the brain really processes differently. That's the big difference. So not everyone that's sensitive to sounds or to tastes or to lights, for example, is highly sensitive.
Yeah, because that is the first thing I think that people
Hmm.
think of, or maybe people who cry easily, or who
Yeah.
really take things very much to heart. That's, I think, the thing that people associate most with the word sensitive. Like, you really need to walk on eggshells around people, or because you don't want to make them cry.
Yeah, so that's another one. Of course, HSPs do get emotional more quickly, because the way we process the things does have an impact on what we feel. But that doesn't mean that everyone who cries easily is a highly sensitive person. And it
Yeah.
also doesn't mean that when you deal with a highly sensitive person, you can't say anything, because ooh, they might cry. So there's so much nuances in there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and people don't always get that.
That's why I'm glad you're here to tell people what it really is.
So another misconception is that it's mostly women, and that's not true either. 50% of the HSP is men, so it's equally distributed.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you about this later too, because most of my viewers are women, but a good 20% or something are men. So
Great.
I wanted to ask you any advice you have for highly sensitive men specifically, because yeah, we live in a society that maybe makes it harder for highly sensitive men to show their sensitive side.
Yeah. Well, it does. I think Western cultures don't really appreciate the more sensitive, the more caring, the more gentle ways. But for example, if you go to Asian cultures, it's much more accepted, and highly sensitive men feel much more at ease there. So it is really a cultural thing, and I think it might help if you're a highly sensitive man to realize that it's not just you, but it's the way people react to you. So what really helps is knowing that you are highly sensitive, and what it entails, because I know that a lot of highly sensitive men feel, I think, flawed, and they really don't have to. But when you always get feedback like you're too sensitive, you shouldn't cry when you're a man, you're not really a man because you're not that tough, it really gets to you. And knowing that being part of being highly sensitive is having talents that are different than most men have would help you make the twists to seeing
Ah,
yourself as a powerful and really inspiring person, instead of being a flawed man.
yeah, of course, like being very like thoughtful and caring, and
Hmm.
wanting to support people the best as best you can. Like, there are so many great things about being sensitive, being like really creative, being able to think outside the box, like so many wonderful things. What would you say for you personally is like the biggest, like the best thing about being highly sensitive?
Just one? There's so many good things.
Yeah.
I think the best one is creative thinking. I really like that part. And being creative is about making all the connections, all the little observations, and your brain just connecting them to one another. So you're able to see things in a very different way. And I really enjoyed that. Now I know about it, because when I was younger, I didn't really get the feedback that was something that was special about me. I just thought, well, you have to stick to the assignments and not crazy. But now I
Yeah.
know about it. I really like it, and I often use the metaphor of the Lego blocks. You know, those blocks that you can build houses from.
Yeah.
There are very many different blocks in different shapes and different forms. You can see it, that the highly sensitive person is in what they perceive. They sort of have more color blocks than
Mm.
a not highly sensitive person, and the way they process the things, they have more shapes, because they see all these connections, where a non-highly sensitive person just has two shapes, because, well, they see and they know already what they want to do. So
Yeah.
when you look at it that way, it is more easy to have a creative idea when you see so many things, so many colored Lego blocks, and so many shapes Lego blocks, and you can build something very different from a non-HSP.
Yeah, I love that. And it's also something that I think we should think about more with kids and education. Like you said, sometimes there's just an assignment and you just need to do exactly what the assignment says, which kind of like reins in a person's creativity
Yeah.
and out of the box thinking. Like maybe they're conditioned to be like, oh, I shouldn't say that. That's not what they want to hear. When actually you could be a better solution.
Yeah, yeah, and we do feel as HSPs what is expected of us, so we tend to adjust to that, and that's um, really a shame, because thinking out of the box is something that we really need in this society, where there's so many complex problems.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
we need highly sensitives for sure. Yeah.
I wanted to share one research that is really connected with this, because what we do see in brain research is when you give an HSP a task that's really easy, you see that they activate more brain areas than a not HSP. So that doesn't seem very effective, cost effective, so to speak. But when there is a very complex problem, the non-HSPs need to really up their game and have a lot more activation, while the HSP stays the same activation. So then, with the complex problems, it's an advantage to be HSP. So we are more equipped to tackle those very difficult problems.
Oh, wow. That I didn't know that. That's like a superpower.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's a new research from 2024.
Ah, cool. And so one last thing before I ask you about how to live a happy life, basically as a highly sensitive person. I read from your research also about the differences in our default mode network, which is a like a
Mhm,
network in the brain.
mhm.
How is that different for highly sensitive people? Could you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so we have different brain networks that are brain areas that work together to focus on a specific task. So, for example, the central executive network is a network that we need to focus on a specific task. And the default mode network is a network that is active when there's not a task at hand. So when you're taking a shower, you just wander off, or when you're thinking about past experiences, or maybe experiences to come. We also call it the mind wandering network.
Mm.
And the brain's research shows us that this network is more active in a highly sensitive person. So when we're resting, that is the time that the default mode network is active in everyone, but it's more active with HSPs. And we assume that this also means that what we have experienced is more stored specifically than others. So we sort of have little maps in our brain where all those experiences are stored, and where others might have 10 little maps, we might have 100, because we really store this so specifically. But that is also a really advantage when you come into the same situation. You can get that map that states the specific thing that you experience at the moment. And we did see in the brain research that when you are focusing on something, when the central executive network is present, with the non-HSPs, the default mode network is pressed low. So it's shut out. So you can really focus on things. But HSPs keep their default mode network really strong. And that doesn't seem really smart, because it costs you energy, and you want to your energy to focus here, and there's a lot going on. But we also know that it can help you when you need information from past experience to put into your recent task. It's far more easy. So the activity of this network also means that we're really able to shift our attention inwards, outwards, past, a future, a present. So that's more easy for us.
Wow. I think, yeah, I mean, I also really relate to the shower situation because most of my video ideas come to me when I'm taking a shower or when I'm going out for a walk. That's when suddenly something pops up. Whereas if I sitting at my laptop with an empty screen trying to think of something, it won't come.
Yeah,
So I think,
yeah,
yeah, highly sensitive people really need to take much more time and not being on our phone and just kind of
yeah,
letting our brain do its thing.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And yeah, there's another research that I don't know. Well, I'm really excited about all those researches. But it's about this exact same thing, because when you have to study words, for example, and you have a list of words and you have to recall them, um, this research showed that when a highly sensitive person had studied those words but did engage in another task directly afterwards, they don't know as much as a non highly sensitive person. But when the highly sensitive person took rest, just 8 minutes of rest, it was in that research, they recalled 50% of the words versus 20% of the non highly sensitive people. So when you do give yourself the time to just wander off, it gives you ideas, as you said, but it also enhances your memory.
Wow. Yeah, for me, it's just I need, even though I know about this, I've known about being highly sensitive for a long time, but I still need this reminder often because I don't know, maybe highly sensitive people are always a little bit hard on themselves, or
Mm.
they expect a lot of themselves, and I constantly need to tell me like, no, it's okay to take bits of rest. It's okay to not do everything on my to-do list for today.
Yeah.
Have time to wander, to daydream. It's so important. I always feel so much better afterwards. But there's
Yeah.
this little nagging voice in your head that tells you like, I should have vacuumed, or I should have edited that video, when you take it
Yeah.
a bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I really get you. That's our. We really feel responsible for everything, and we know we see the bigger picture. So we know that if we don't do this task, it will have consequences for for the bigger thing. But as you said, if you don't take your rest, you don't have those creative ideas, and you don't have access to all your superpowers. So you really do need to rest to be your best self. And when we talk about that, I'm curious about what you like best about being highly sensitive. What's your favorite talent?
I would say the amount of joy I get
Hmm.
from experiences. I get so deeply moved by music and movies and art and nature and being around my friends, my family. And when I experience how I experience, or when I see how I experience these things, and then I compare to how I can kind of gauge how other people experience these things, it seems like there is a deeper level sometimes for
Mm.
me. And of course,
Yeah.
I can't look inside their head and feel what they're feeling, but it's feels much more intense.
Yeah.
And of course, yeah, that also goes the other way around. But yeah, I love that. Like, I have a picture of myself when I'm, I don't know, maybe 5 years old, just looking at a shrub
Mm.
in my parents' backyard because there was a light, a beam of sunlight on the shrub, and it looked
Mm.
really pretty. And I was just kind of mesmerized by the beauty of the shrub, looking at it. And I remember that ever since being very little, just being mesmerized by the beauty of
Mm.
things. And yeah, that's one thing that I really like about it.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. But I also want to stress that it's really important to know this about yourself, because it's also a way to refresh your energy and to feel better. It's not just, well, with the negative things. I can understand that you don't always want that, but when you might feel, well, not so good someday, know that you can induce those feelings with yourself and change your state of mind. So it's
Mm.
also a way to cope with difficult moments.
Yeah, seeking out beauty, things
Yeah,
that lift you
yeah.
up, and yeah, yeah, that's a really good one. And so, one of the comments that I got was about feeling overstimulated. So they said, loud noises, bright lights, crowds make me want to hide alone in a dark room to recover.
Mm.
So, what would you say is like a good strategy for highly sensitive people to navigate in the world, to just not feel overstimulated all the time? Because I feel like many of us maybe would prefer to work a little bit less, but it's not like financially viable, or we have demands sometimes that we can't really get out of. So how do you do with that?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not all avoidable, but it does really help to know what you are sensitive to. So I told about the five senses that we know: hearing, sensing, foreseeing, feeling, smelling, tasting. But there's also this interoception, emoception. It's about emotions. And when you know that, for example, sounds are mostly overwhelming you, then it's more easy to find a strategy that helps you navigate that. So first, try to keep track of them for about 2 weeks or something, and try
Oh,
to fill in what senses did trick me into, yeah, feeling overwhelmed. And
yeah.
when you have made a list of that, you can see, for okay, can I, for example, reduce the sounds in my workspace? Are there things that I can do? Or, for example, emotions are really an issue. So your emoception is very triggered, for example, in an open plan office. So is there something you can do to avoid feeling all those emotions? Is, for example, can you turn your face the other way, or can you move away from a colleague who is very negative all the time? Or so it really helps you to choose the right strategies and the right improvements to lower your level of overwhelm. Because when you feel overwhelmed, it's really difficult to react at that time, because your brain is just not capable of it. But there's a lot of ways to do it beforehand.
Oh. And I
So
think that also has to do with feeling, knowing that that's okay.
yeah,
And that you're not being high maintenance or difficult or
no.
childish if you take measures to help yourself feel better.
Yeah, definitely. For example, when you have discovered you need certain things on your work spot, don't feel that you are complaining, or that you are too
Mm.
much. Look at it this way: that if this is realized, that you can be your best self, and of course the organization profits from that as well. So
Yeah.
that makes it more easy to ask, for example, for the quiet spots in your office.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Great answer. And is it also that this is something I've been wondering about? Can you become more sensitive to certain stimuli by avoiding them for a while? Or can you kind of get used to it by being in those environments more and then therefore be less sensitive to them? Or is it just always going to be the same?
Well, I have heard from different therapists that are really focusing on sensory stimuli that, for example, always using a headphone could make you more sensitive to sounds.
Oh
So
no.
avoid, yeah, yeah. So you should be really careful with that. If you yeah, block out every sound every day, then yeah, it's more sensitive the next time that you experience it. So, but we don't know if it counts for all senses. We do have some processes we know the brain applies. For example, what you say when you experience things that you get habituated to it, we call it, it means that you are less sensitive to it. But we do think that for HSPs that might work a bit differently.
Mm,
So we know, for example, that sensitivity to sounds or something stays on your whole life. We also do know that in difficult periods of your life, such as a burnout, I don't know how you have experienced that yourself, but in those difficult periods when your brain is already very, very crowded, that it is more difficult for different stimuli to be
mm,
processed. So then you can notice that yeah, it's different for you. So you might feel more sensitive, but it's most of the times it's a temporary
mm.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't even think I need research to know how more sensitive I am to things when I'm not feeling well. For sure,
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely true. And one thing that I also like to remind myself of, I can recover fine, even if my overstimulation levels are like right there. If I
Yeah.
just take some time to recover, I will feel better. And sometimes it takes an hour, sometimes it takes a weekend, but um, it's not the end of the world when I come home from a nice afternoon with a friend or something, and I'm feeling so overwhelmed. Like I know what to do to feel better.
Yeah.
It's not a cause for immediate concern or anything.
Hmm. Well, and I think that's something that you learn when you have really get into the high sensitivity part of yourself. Because when you don't know it, you might feel, well, what's wrong with me? Because everyone is doing this, and why can't I? And why am I always so tired after a party when everyone is just going to get drinks after the party? So it really helps to know that you are highly sensitive.
So, one more comment that I got from someone. As a highly sensitive person, I tend to take on the emotions and feelings of those around me. Some tips on how to keep myself protected against feeling other people's pain and suffering. And someone else also asked what to do when you get very affected by the bad news and what is happening in the world.
Yeah.
So, do you have any tips for us?
Yeah, so first, I want to explain what is happening to you. So I talked about the senses, and one senses is emoception, where you get the emotions of others, you really sense it, and we call it affective empathy when you can feel other person's feelings. We also know that our brain processes things more deeply, and we also notice that the social brain areas are more activated. So as a highly sensitive person, you're really getting into what does the other person want? What can I do? How do I keep the harmony in the group? Is everybody feeling happy? Are they happy with me? Uh, am I not rejected? All those things. So it's a brain process where you are really focused on the other person. So when you notice within yourself that other person's emotions are affecting you very deeply, it does help a bit to understand what's going on inside you. And that might even help to realize that what you're feeling is not yours and might be the emotions of another person. That's really helpful. And when you do notice it, it is the emotion of someone else, that you literally think, okay, I don't have to feel this. This is the emotion another person, and I let it go. Try
Mm.
to visualize that you let it go. What you can also do when you're in contact with, for example, a person that you know that really affects you all the time, that you're really aware of, okay, I notice that he is or she is feeling really sad or really angry or really frustrated. And you keep the meta position, so to speak. So you observe what's going on. Because when you are really connected to the other, it just happens. And we also know that in the brain, that is because of the mirror neurons that are really active in a highly sensitive person, make an invisible connection between the brains. We also call it the neural Wi-Fi. So it's an invisible connection. So it sends those data over invisibly. But when you are really observant of that, then it's more easy to say, okay, I don't want that data. Keep that for yourself. So it's a way to not be
As
contagious.
affected by,
Yeah, thank
yeah.
you.
So what you're saying is understand what's happening, observe rather than letting it happen, and then being like, okay, this person is feeling frustrated. I notice I'm feeling that frustration too. It's not mine. I don't need that. That is his feelings or her feelings, not mine. And then choosing to try to let them go. Maybe take a deep breath or.
Take a deep breath, and you can also induce a positive state in yourself, because we do know that you can affect your own emotions. And we talked about it earlier, that
Right.
feeling those emotions of gratitude or beauty, or so when you have imagined to get those feelings out of your system because it's of him or her, then you can, well, look at something beautiful, and try to get in your own emotions.
Oh, that's a really nice tip. I haven't tried that yet. I'm gonna give that a try next time. And when it comes to the news, like, would you say it's okay to just be not watching the news for a while when something is going on in the world, maybe a war or something
Yeah.
really terrible, where you're just taking distance from it?
Yeah, so that's something I heard a lot from HSPs, that there's so much going on. It constantly affects them, and it's really difficult to concentrate on your work because you feel all those emotions for all the other people. And so even at a great distance, we can get the emotion of another person. And I myself try to not get the news that often a day. So once a day, I watch the news, and all the other things I block out because I know it affects myself so much. I know that there are a lot of highly sensitive people that feel so connected to the world, and it feels a bit, well, not okay to block it out, but you sometimes need to, because otherwise there's no room for anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's something I've really struggled with myself, and only recently kind of made my peace with.
Hmm.
Feeling kind of guilty about not watching the news as often. I'm like you. I do watch the news sometimes. I like to stay informed on a high level, but um, I also definitely have lots of boundaries in place when it comes to world events and news and stuff. And it always makes me feel very guilty, or like I didn't care, or I should be, a better world citizen, or something. But,
Yeah,
constantly subjecting yourself to all these horrible things to the point where, you can't be yourself and show up in the world and make a difference. Yeah, that's not really
yeah,
helping anyone.
no, no. And I also know that there are some people that really have a real advantage of picturing a sort of bubble around them. So, sort of protection. When you do a meditation, when you are breathing in and out, you can picture a sort of protective bubble around you that keeps the negative things outside. And you can use it for other people's emotions that are in direct contact with you, but you can also use it for the news. So you do get the information, but you don't get all the intense emotions. And
Mm.
for some people it works, and for other people it doesn't. But
Yep.
if it helps you, it can be a way to just keep yourself standing in this really chaotic world at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. Just getting in information, but not everything that comes with it. Just
Hmm.
cannot penetrate your bubble. And when I'm
Yeah.
out with someone and they are experiencing strong emotions and I'm experiencing strong emotions, sometimes I'll just take a bathroom break.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
just be like 1 or 2 minutes, just kind of shutting myself up in a little cubicle, just being like, and
Yeah,
that
really
also
good.
really helps.
Yeah. Yeah, and the breathing exercise is always good in such a moment because
Mm,
it does elevate your stress hormones. And when you are high on stress at a long time, there can, yeah, occur very different complaints, physical but mentally as well. So your breathing exercise helps you lower your stress hormones, and when you do that
mm.
many times a day, you can really feel the difference.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So last big thing that I wanted to ask you about
Hmm.
is one comment asked, do you have any tips for dealing with people, mostly family, who are
Hmm.
negative about you being a highly sensitive person and who say things like you need to suck it up and stop being so emotional?
Yeah.
I personally, my friends and family know about this, and they accept it as being a real thing. It doesn't mean that they really understand what it's like, I think, um, but they do accept it. And I used to be told this as well when I was a kid in school, and my friends would call me like a big wuss. And when you don't have that vocabulary, it's really hard. But when you do, what would you say?
Yeah, well, first I want to acknowledge that it really hurts when people so close to you don't really listen to you. They don't really consider it to be a real thing. It does something with your self-worth, and knowing that you are highly sensitive, I hope helps you stay in your own worth. Perhaps you can also see that they really don't understand it, that it is difficult for someone who is not highly sensitive to really get what it is. So perhaps that does ease the pain a bit. What I also recommend is that sometimes it's more easy for people to give really concrete, really specific examples of what it's like. So instead of being, oh, I can't do this because I'm highly sensitive, you can also say, I really don't like to go to this party just after we have been to this a meeting because my brain just needs some time to rest and to process things. So I'd rather lie down for an hour and perhaps I can come later or we can do something else, but this doesn't work for me. So that's
Mm,
most of the time people get that more easily
yeah.
than when they hear the, yeah, very abstract concept of being highly sensitive where they have their own ideas about. So try to be specific in what you need and what you experience. That might
Mm,
raise some
yeah.
understanding.
Yeah, that is actually a really good point. And do you think it would help if people, and yeah, you're not going to do this with people you don't really know that well, but family members, if you can send them a few articles or be like, hey, there's proof this is a real thing.
Well, yeah, then I recommend, of course.
Oh. The book, The Brain of the Highly
Yeah,
Sensitive Person.
yeah.
Yeah,
There
but
are,
it really is nice because sometimes people just when they've known someone their whole life, they think, yeah, they're just like that. But when someone else says it
mhm,
and this person has done research and there's like all this evidence,
yeah.
maybe it's easier for people to be like, oh, okay, this is a real thing.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot. And there are many blog articles everywhere to be found on my website, of course, as well, but on all kinds of places. And it could help people to see that, okay, there are different aspects that come with high sensitivity. And no, I recognize that with my loved one or with my friend or with my daughter or son. Just realize that what is really common for you is not that common for your friends or your parents.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I remember when I was going through my burnout, and my therapist at the time said, "You're a highly sensitive person. You need to look into that." And I did. And I was talking to my mom. I found something out about myself. I'm a highly sensitive person. And I told her about it.
Mm,
And she almost, I could see that she felt a little guilty or a little bit bad about it, that she
mm,
hadn't seen it before. And she was
mm,
like, we didn't know about that back then. And I, like, maybe she should have sensed it somehow, or she should have known it better.
mm.
But yeah, if you don't know about it, then you
Yeah.
can't know about it.
Hey, no, no. So they're not to blame. Well,
No.
there is not that much information yet. Well, there is information, but it's not. It hasn't reached everybody. So you have to be part of the solution as well. You can't accept other persons to really get into you and try to understand you. You
Mm.
have to give the information for them as well. And for example, in the workspace, that's a real thing as well, because there are a lot of HSPs that have a difficult time at work because the circumstances are not that good for them. But for example, when you talk to your manager, it can also help to show the benefits of your trade. So when you just not only talk about the more negative things or the things that you need that others don't, you can also say, but it does lead to more well considered decisions. So you show
Mm.
the benefit of it. It gives you more balance in your talk to person. So it's not, oh, I can't do things. I'm not like you. It's difficult for me to do certain things. No, I'm really good at this and that and that and that, but I need the right circumstances to deliver that.
Yeah, and we have so much to offer, so it would be, yeah, such a shame if we don't know how to verbalize, the many talents that come with it.
Yeah.
So before we sign off, is there any one thing that you would like to say to anyone listening right now who is a highly sensitive person? Anything we haven't mentioned yet?
Oh, yeah. Well, congratulations on your high sensitivity, I would say. And I know the focus is much on the struggles and the difficult things. But what we said, it is a gift. There are so many talents, and know that you're worth taking your time, taking your rest, and getting things the way that suits you, because you are a wonderful person, and you have the right to flourish and be the best you can.
Yeah, you make me emotional. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So, thank you so much for joining me today on the channel. I had such a wonderful time talking with you, and I'm sure that we will get many comments from people as well. So, thank you so much for everything you do for us highly sensitives.
Thank you, Vera. Very nice to talk to you.
Great. Okay, bye bye.
Bye.